Hello, I'm Conrado, and this is Comic Caddy. Today I'll be interviewing Phil Juliano. Phil Juliano is the creator of Best in Show Comics and is currently working on Adventure of Chipmunk Zones. You can check out his work in the description below. Now let's get started with the interview.
I can go both ways. I haven't read a comic book in a very long time, and the last one I did read wasn't either. I'll just say Sunday Funnies. I used to read a lot of comic books. I used to read a lot of a lot of Marvel actually, way more Marvel than X-Men. And I just kind of I got to a point where one, they were getting too expensive to buy, 30 comics a week or whatever. And, once I started creating my own, I found myself reading comics less and less. So because I don't want to be influenced about with everything else that's going on. I don't want to read comics, like superhero comics, and all of a sudden have a superhero comic. I wanted to kind of veer away from that and do my own thing. So eventually, I just kind of stopped reading. Okay, so my the name of my comic is Best in Show, and it's been around for, well, geez, 12 years now. It's Well, it started off as just a kind of slice of life type of thing where it was, a 30-something guy, his girlfriend, and their dog, and they would just kind of comment on, things that were happening at that time. He was a baseball fan, he liked to drink beer and that anyway, coffee, and they'd talk about stuff that was happening, you know, in the news, and just the type of stuff that couples deal with and pet owners deal with, and it's eventually it got a little more liberal, creatively liberal, where I started introducing, like, aliens and zombies and that kind of stuff to make things fun. About 2 years ago, I kind of got stuck in a rut with the old setup, with the middle or the older adult couple, so seeing as everything I write is pretty much semi-autobiographical, I was going through this period where I'm like, you know what? I'm in my 40s, and I was thinking about retirement, and I've never stopped liking toys, and I've never stopped liking cartoons, and even though I don't read comics, I never really stopped liking comics. So it got to a point where I wanted to shake up the comic strip simply because I was bored with it, and I decided that, you know what? I was really thinking a lot about my Star Wars toys at that time, and I decided to take the main character PJ, back in time. So he did this by, he created this time machine out of a refrigerator box, and it was all very childish, and but it worked. So he ended up making it back in time. He comes back. It's the 70s, and he's a 7-year old again. And the first thing he did is, like, he ran into his mom. So by taking the kids back in time, he got to revisit all those things that you take for granted when you're a kid, being close to your mom, having your school time friends, and having that awesome toy collection that you can play with at any time. Um, he eventually gets trapped. Like the time machine gets destroyed, gets thrown out in the trash because it was a box, right? And he gets trapped as a kid. And at first he fought against it, but after a while he realized, like, you know what? I get a second chance to do this. I get to be with my friends. I get to be home with my mom. I have my dog with me, and I get to deal with all that cool stuff. But he also had to go back to school and deal with bullies and do math homework and all the other stuff that comes along with being a kid. So it's been a really cool therapy for me. You know what I mean? Because I get to go back, revisit my childhood, and kind of throw in a bunch of all the cool stuff that I wish happened. And it turned out it's turning out to be very exciting, and it's going on a lot longer than I expected. So it's kind of taken on a life of its own. And now, because of that shift in storyline, I am now syndicated. I have my comics get distributed through Tribune Content Agency, and they get published in college newspapers across the country. And I just signed a deal with Bulls Press, which is going to get it syndicated and distributed to European newspapers. So it's all very exciting. And now I'm, going off into writing chapter books and doing all kinds of other crazy stuff. But yeah, it's been a wild ride, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it. Well, the whole comic came about when I bought a dog. I was at that time I was working with a buddy, and we were doing a lot of independent comic projects. A couple of titles we worked on. We worked on a comic called Stone Parker PI, and we had Captain Whammo. So we did all these different comic titles. But after a while, that got kind of old for me too. And I ended up bringing home this dog this in May of 2004 when I brought him home, and I just started watching him, and like magic, these ideas start just popping in my head as far as you know writing comics about what I'm seeing. So it started off as a pet owner, a new dog, and kind of commenting on having a new dog, and then it eventually evolved into what it is today. So inspired by buying a dog. Oh God, there's a lot. It's funny because I'm researching and like revisiting them as well now. Like Chuck Jones, the animator for Looney Tunes, and of course Bill Watterson and Jim Davis, who did Garfield, and you know Mike Peters, who did Mother Goose and Grimm. And now I'm actually going back, and I'm learning about the masters. Like Walt Kelly, the guy who created Pogo in the '50s, and um, Al Capp, who created Lil Abner. I mean, these are all the top most successful comic strips ever. Until Peanuts come along. And I was just reading about Milton Caniff, who did adventure comics called Terry and the Pirates, and Steve Canyon. So these are all influenced me, and of course, everyday life, TV. Watch. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and there's my comic strip is just infused with Star Wars references and stuff. I mean, the kid goes back in time to get his toys, his Star Wars toys, and like he holds group therapy with his Star Wars figures when he's having a hard time at school. He comes home and he lays out all his Star Wars toys, and he starts talking to them like they're a group therapy session. And he has, a hand puppet Yoda that he talks to in the tub when he's taking a bath. But and other cartoons like Looney Tunes, like Saturday morning cartoons, and of course I start talking about the comics that I used to read and all that. So a little bit of everything. All my influences I kind of throw in there. Even Bob Ross. You remember who Bob Ross is? He's the famous TV who had the really soft voice and he painted Happy Little Trees. He made his way in. The Muppets made their way in. I mean, anything and everything that I enjoyed as a kid has influenced me in my comic. It's mine. I get to work from home, and honestly, the best part is, like I said, it's like cathartic. It's therapeutic, where I get to write about what it's like being a kid, and I get to kind of add different elements to this alternate childhood that I didn't experience before, and it's it's just a lot of fun revisiting childhood. Looking at it, of course, as an adult, and as an adult, you can appreciate things because hindsight's 2020. And you look at it with an adult point of view, and you realize, well, that was a lot of fun, just running around the woods and climbing trees, and that was your summer. And it I guess as a creator, you're compelled to create, and so I'm able to create and come up with my own ideas, and I'm able to like kind of relive my childhood, and I'm able to incorporate all the things that I know and love into a comic strip that I'm happy with, that looks nice, and it gets appreciated because people buy my comics, people read my comics, and now I'm being syndicated, and it's going to be in the newspapers all around. So all that stuff together makes doing what I do awesome. And the fact that I get to work from home and I get to wear pajamas and drink coffee all day isn't a bad thing either. Um, that's a good question. Success is being able to do it and being justified in doing it. Um, and that's both financially and creatively. Again, as a creator, I'm always striving to be better, to write a better gag, to draw a better line, to color a little bit better, to make everything more streamlined and just overall better crafted. And Now it's not supporting my livelihood, but I'm getting paid to draw comics. So the fact that I get to do it, period, is successful. That I've been doing it for so long, and that I'm being recognized for the talent, or for how enjoyable it is. That's all very. I consider that all successful, and again, getting paid to do it is obviously a sign of success. Um, there are days when I have zero ideas, and when that happens, I panic. But of course, excuse me, um, the beauty of writing comic strips is, even if you don't have an idea one day, the next day you can have 10, and you still make your deadlines and your quotas. The struggle for me is writing so far ahead as to give myself a couple months buffer. You know what I mean? Because and by doing that, it allows me to, the freedom to do other stuff, and not always sweat the deadlines. So um, staying that far ahead is what it's been a challenge. And obviously, getting it recognized, or getting it in front of people at all, is so hard nowadays, because everybody can draw a comic and put it on the web. And there's thousands and thousands and thousands of them, and there's hundreds and hundreds and thousands of websites that you can go to see these things. And it's not like a newspaper, where the newspaper people, they picked out the best, they put it on a sheet, they put it in front of you, they do all the work, they pick it out, and they put it in front of you, and then you look at what is considered the best comics. With getting your comic noticed now, I mean, especially online, is you have to get it up there. You have to be consistent and keep it out there, and then you have to get people to your page, to your Facebook page, to follow your Twitter or whatever, to actually read it, like it, and continue to follow it. Um, and then, of course, on the other end, as far as the print medium, the fact that newspapers are shrinking, and that syndicates aren't accepting new comics, and that the fact that syndicates are actually more interested in sure things, quote unquote, the comics that already have a built-in fan base, that already have like 3 million people liking them on Facebook, and a Twitter following of 100,000. That's the kind of stuff they're looking for in order to even consider putting them into a newspaper that's so hard to get into in the first place. So, but you know what? It's still the best job in the world. you know? Hopefully, the comic strip itself will find some traction in Europe, and through that, will come back to the United States with a European following, and hopefully find traction here in the U.S., and hopefully have itself a spot on the Sunday page in the U.S. papers, or at least online through the same syndicates. What I also see is an expansion in my world, in my comics world, through children's chapter books and children's literature, because I'm working towards that as well, translating and novelizing my comic strips into children's chapter book form. And I've been working on that now since the beginning of the year, and I hope to have my first chapter book finished and published by the end of this year. Regarding my comic strip, well, yeah, I'm a full-time freelance illustrator and cartoonist. So the comic strip is only one part of what I do. I have a bunch of other clients that I do commercial work for, and illustrating children's books, from illustrating children's books to illustrating corporate um, management training materials for this huge computer company. So I do all kinds of commercial work, and like logo design, and I even draw comics for a fella, and I do t-shirt designs, and I do a lot of spot illustrations and full color magazine type stuff, and that's where I make the bulk of my money right now. So there's always projects going on with these clients, but as far as my comic strip, my personal work, I have my comic strip, my chapter books, and hopefully a series of chapter books and other licensing and merchandising and all that. But first, first things first. If I if I could reach the level of financial security with just my comic strips, you're goddamn right I would do it. Um, but even with cartoonists that are syndicated through the big U.S. syndicates, it's it's not like it used to be. I think the last true successful comic strip where they made like a celebrity type income, and that's Stephen Pastis with Pearls Before Swine. Since he came on the scene, even some successful cartoonists still have to take other work. It's not like it used to be in the 50s, where when you were a cartoonist and your comic strip was in a newspaper and you were being read by 600 million people all over the world, you were like a rock star. You were filthy rich, and you were driving limousines and that kind of stuff. That doesn't happen now. And again, I'm going to speak personally and just from the knowledge of the folks that I know and the professionals that I meet. Um, it's not like it used to be, but if I had the opportunity to make a full-time living at just drawing my comics featuring my characters, yeah, you're goddamn right, I would do it. Oh, you know what? There's a fella, a colleague of mine. He's another cartoonist by the name of Brad Perri, and he draws a comic strip called Pirate Mike, the Maladjusted Suburbanite. And he's doing really well. He's got a big online following. He's got follow. He's on Go Comics, or not Go Comics, but Comic Sherpa through Go Comics. So he's got a lot of followers there. He's got a lot of followers on his webpage. I mean, he started doing comic book conventions with me, so he's beefing up his fan base there. He's incredibly funny. He's incredibly educated in comics and comic strips and the history of the craft, and he's just one hell of a guy. So I would definitely suggest you get him on, because he'll be a very entertaining interview.
And that was the end of a great interview. Right now, Phil Juliano is currently working on a project called Adventures of Chickman Jones, and it needs funding, so click the link below and donate today. Well, I hope you have a nice day, and remember to check out ComicCaddy.com for more interviews. Bye!